Welcome to The Debate. Today, we're looking at a huge socioeconomic trend, something we see all over the world, the rural exodus. Basically, young people leaving their rural homes for big cities, mostly for work or for school.
And the central question really is whether this is a good thing or a bad thing overall. Is it a net benefit that, gives people opportunities and modernizes the country? Or is it a net detriment that just speeds up the decline of entire regions?
Exactly. And I'll be arguing that this migration is fundamentally a positive thing.
And I'll be arguing that the negative consequences are just too significant to ignore.
So my position is that you have to see this movement as something that is, at its core, positive. It's driven by economic necessity and individual aspiration. When you get talent moving to these dense urban areas, you're just maximizing the use of human capital. Young people get access to education, to job markets that are, well, they're just completely unavailable back home. This movement is really the engine of national modernization. It's propelled by these, agglomeration effects that create this incredible productivity growth in cities. We're really just optimizing our resources as a nation.
I see that point about individual choice, and that's important. But my concern is with the cumulative cost that I think you're minimizing. We are seeing, it's nothing short of a demographic collapse in the regions that are sending people away. This so-called brain drain just depletes the pool of young, skilled people. And what you're left with is an aging population that's, frankly, ill-equipped to maintain local infrastructure or innovate. The result is a really rapid decline of local economic and social structures, which creates this profound instability that, eventually comes back to haunt the national level. And you frame this as some kind of efficient optimization. But efficiency at what cost, right? We are, in effect, externalizing the structural decline onto these rural communities. The tax base vanishes, schools close, you can't even keep essential services running. These are severe, systemic costs that the regions are forced to bear. And then what happens? The state has to come in later with these massive, inefficient interventions just to stabilize things. That isn't efficiency. That's just a geographical transfer of debt.
Okay, I understand why you see it that way, but let me offer a different perspective. This is an externalization. It's a necessary economic transition. The agglomeration effect I mentioned, it creates what are called knowledge spillovers. Specialized information spreads so quickly in cities, and that's what drives complex exponential growth. You simply cannot achieve that scale of innovation with talent spread out geographically. And besides, these rural regions aren't totally abandoned. Remittances from the cities act as a crucial financial support. And we also see what's called circular migration, where people do return later in life with more capital, more skills, which provides a sort of delayed subsidy back to their hometowns.
See, I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning. The data shows that circular migration is statistically just not enough to counteract the massive permanent loss of people. And remittances, well, they're helpful for day-to-day consumption, sure, but they rarely translate into sustainable, productive investment in the local economy. They're treating the symptoms, not the actual disease. If a region doesn't have a critical mass of young entrepreneurs and innovators, no amount of money sent from the city is going to rebuild its capacity for economic self-renewal.
But we have to look at the collective benefit, through the lens of aggregate growth. The overall modernization and national GDP increase that's driven by these dynamic urban centers, it elevates the entire nation. We're centralizing opportunity, yes, but that centralization accelerates progress for everyone. So policy should focus on mitigating the localized pain, I agree, but not at the expense of slowing down the primary engine of our economic progress. We shouldn't be trying to artificially stop the optimal movement of human capital.
That's a compelling argument if you only care about maximizing aggregate GDP. But have you considered the structural fragility this creates? Urban centers are completely reliant on stable, functioning rural areas for resources, for food security, for environmental stability. So if we allow that rural foundation to just wither, if we structurally asset strip these communities to fuel immediate urban growth, the instability created by these deserted, unproductive communities becomes a massive negative side effect. Is concentrated yet precarious growth truly better than balanced, sustainable growth?
In the end, I think the positive forces of individual aspiration and national efficiency shouldn't be constrained. The policy challenge is to manage the systemic costs, sure, through targeted investment in rural areas, making sure they can benefit indirectly from this trend.
And I would say, conversely, that the erosion of rural social and economic capital demands a more fundamental rethink of our whole economic model. We need policies that actively promote regional parity, recognizing that a nation's stability really rests on the health of all its parts, not just a hyper-productive urban core.
So we're left with this central tension, balancing individual flourishing and national efficiency against the collective need for regional health. The evidence really forces us to weigh the undeniable upsides of centralization against the very real systemic costs to local communities.